Welcome to today's Global Connections program. I'm Bill Miller. What is one company in India doing to focus attention on the Sustainable Development Goals, especially the goals to eliminate poverty and to empower women? My guest today is an expert on this company and on these particular activities. My guest today is going to bring us up to date on this very interesting company called Jaipur Rug Company. My guest today is the stakeholder engagement partner, I want to make sure I got that right, for the Jaipur Rugs Foundation, Yash Ranga.
Yeah.
Yash, welcome to today's Global Connections program.
Thank you, Bill. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
I wanted to make sure I got that. That's quite a title. And of course, we're hearing a lot about stakeholders. We're hearing so much more about that, and we're going to get into it in just a moment. But before we do, let's talk about the Jaipur Rug Company, and then we're going to talk about your foundation, which is a very, very interesting and important foundation that affects literally the lives of hundreds of thousands of Indians and people in other parts of the world. What is the Jaipur Rugs Company first?
So Jaipur Rugs Company basically started with a simple mission to make the lives behind this carpet industry to live with dignity and have all the opportunities to live a healthy life. And that's when in 1978, when the founder of Jaipur Rugs, Mr. N.K. Chaudhary, known as NKC, started as taking loan from his father from $200, and he bought a second-hand bicycle, and he started with 2 looms and 9 artisans. And now we have a network of 40,000 artisans working in 600 villages of India.
40,000. 40,000. It's quite a development. Now, he is called the Gandhi of the carpet industry, is that correct? Why is he called that?
So he's known as the Gandhi of carpet industry because he completely disrupted the carpet industry, because this industry used to run by the middlemen and a lot of middle layers between. And that's when he realized that the real potential of these artisans need to be showcased to the global market directly without any middleman. So this whole idea of eliminating these middlemen in the supply chain got him the tag of the Gandhi of carpet industry.
Has there been a democratization of the carpet industry, of this whole operation, and involving more of the grassroots people?
Yes, so we just democratized the carpet industry by providing work to the artisans at their doorsteps. So they do not have to migrate in cities, or they do not have to migrate to factories to get this work of art weaving of art done. So this whole idea of bringing people at their doorsteps, the work and sustaining the work is the most important thing that we believe at Jaipur Rugs, makes it as a democratization of the supply chain.
Mm-hmm. In so many of the countries, well, I'm sure in India too, you probably have this where you have factories, like in Bangladesh, you have factories where people make shirts and what have you. In China, factories. In the United States, factories. But these people stay in their own home, and they're able to operate in their communities and really are really thriving in their, I'm assuming, in their communities, and still not having to move long distances.
So that's the whole idea of Jaipur Rugs model, and the distinguishing factor is that we do not want these people to migrate for work. Instead, the work should be provided at their doorsteps. So that why through our branch offices, we try and produce our raw materials at their doorsteps, and then give them work at their doorsteps so that they do not have to migrate in need of work, and they can be at their families, and they can make the best use of the time and make an economic empowerment for their family.
Mm-hmm. And our viewers can go to your website at jaipurrugs.org, jaipurrugs.org, to get more information on what we're talking about. Let's talk now, transition into the foundation, the Jaipur Rug Foundation. What exactly is that, and what is your main mission?
So Jaipur Rugs Foundation was founded in 2004 as a non-profit arm, and it's a separate legal entity, and it was registered as a non-profit in India. And the whole idea is to empower the lives behind the work of this carpet and the communities of artisans that are engaged in this supply chain, to give them dignity and to provide them economic opportunities at their doorsteps.
How do you determine who is going to participate in the foundation? How do you do your outreach to bring people in, to make them part of your really your vast network is what it really is.
So we have a modus operandi to this, and then what we do is we first initially start with the scoping studies. So during the scoping studies, we realize that in the areas where the socioeconomic indicators are not really good, there are not opportunities for people for work, there is seasonal agriculture because India is the agrarian economy. And in the areas where we work, we usually see that the agriculture is not major source of livelihood for the people. And that's the beginning when Jaipur Rugs Foundation starts with community mobilization and figure out that there is a need of such intervention, that if we start intervening in those areas, that can completely prosper those areas and the communities living there with not only economic opportunities, but through the socio development of Jaipur Rugs Foundation activities, it's a complete socio-economic development in those areas.
With your particular operation, how many, you mentioned 40,000 artisans in India, how you sell a large number of your products in India. What are your major markets overseas, and how many other countries are you operating in right now?
So basically we export to more than 45 countries, and we have an arm in US, which is Jaipur Living INC, which especially takes care of the US market. It's based out of in Atlanta, Georgia. And then we also have our e-commerce platform. So through e-commerce, we do most of our business, and the export business is there.
Mm-hmm. A term we've been using a lot over the past several years is corporate social responsibility, CSR. And it seems like most companies, if not all the companies, have some form of corporate social responsibility. And of course, it sounds like yours does also. What does that mean for you? Does that mean the same thing as it might mean for a company in Canada or in Bolivia or someplace like that? How do you view that term?
No, so for us, corporate social responsibility at Jaipur Rugs is not different from what we do, because we believe in this basic philosophy that let there be fairness and goodness, and most importantly, love prevail in the business. Profits will automatically, inevitably follow. And so we do not do separately as corporate social responsibility is named in this world, but it's ingrained in our business model.
I see. In some companies, some corporations, they have a fixed amount. They say we're going to take 2% of our investment, or 2% of profits anyway, and plow those, reinvest those into the community to help with social programs or to help people become entrepreneurs and that type of thing. Do you have a fixed amount, or is it yours is just one large organism that's intertwined?
So this 2% is a mandatory under the company law in India, and India is one of the first countries in the world to make this CSR law as a mandate for every organization who crosses a specific benchmarks in terms of profits and revenues. And for us, the 2% is we have to follow that, and we follow that. But more than that, it's, as I told you, it's ingrained in the business model. So more than that goes to the activities that we do through foundation is part of our business. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you do any type of follow-up with the now 40,000? They're not employees. I guess they're independent contractors. Yes. Is that what you would call them, or something similar to that?
So what we call them as each artisan and entrepreneur. So they act as suppliers to Jaipur Rugs. They work independently. Jaipur Rugs just plays a role of facilitator in providing them the raw materials and providing them the work opportunities and having market for that work. Mm-hmm. So we just play as a catalyst role in this whole ecosystem of linking these artisans with the global customers.
Mm-hmm. Are the people, the majority of these people, when they come into this situation, are they already trained? Are they already what we would call journey artisans, that type of thing? Or do you have training programs for them, workshops, some types of assistance, maybe in other areas too, maybe social assistance, familial assistance, whatever the case, educational assistance, but how do you do that?
So like we have two major arms under Jaipur Rugs Foundation's ambit, and the first arm is called entrepreneurship development. Mm-hmm. So in entrepreneurship development, there are a few areas where this art form is already being practiced and we have weavers there. So in areas where there are no such opportunities and there is a space where this skill can be given to people. So recently we partnered with World Bank and a government in Bihar to provide skill training to 2,000 women in the most acutely Naxalite affected areas and give them the skill. So we have our specific program which varies from 3 months to 6 months, and then we train them on the skill, and then we link them through this work.
Do you have an idea of how long people stay with this particular program, with this project, as far as working with you? Is there very much turnover, or do they go for many, many years?
So what we do during a project is like 60% is we consider that they would stay with us and they'll work with us. But if you talk about our artisans who are associated with Jaipur Rugs, we have artisans working with us like last 30 years, 40 years now.
Really?
Yes.
That's quite a track record.
So that's what we call a Jaipur Rugs has an extended family of thousands and thousands of people in different part of India.
It certainly sounds like it, yes. I'm just curious, in the various countries, if you look at the industrialized countries anyway, they usually have some type of unemployment insurance program, social security program, that type of thing. India does too, to some degree, I'm sure. How do you work that out with the employees who are the artisans and entrepreneurs? Do you help them get into these programs? Or if someone, say, were to become disabled, say that a person's arm developed arthritis or something like that and couldn't work, what would happen in that case?
So that answers my second vertical of Jaipur Rugs Foundation, which is social development. So under the social development, we do activities like have programs like alternative education program, which provides education to these artisans and the communities of artisans. Then we have a program for their health. So we provide basic healthcare services by partnering with different hospitals and different partners so that they can have access to good health services. And then in cases of such accidents and in cases of such disabilities, we try and link them with the government schemes, which helps them to live the life after and avail the opportunities and avail these policies which government has for them. So this whole government linkage program of Jaipur Rugs Foundation help them to link through these best activities of government.
Well, you're watching Global Connections Television, which is a privately funded, independently produced program. The opinions expressed on Global Connections are solely those of the moderator and his guest. We would invite our viewers to go to our website at www.globalconnectionstelevision.com to view previous programs. Also, if you're involved with any type of media outlet, be it a PBS or community access television station, or perhaps a university that has an intra-campus television hookup, or you just have a website and you're interested in our programs, please go to the website, our website, and download them. Global Connections Television is provided free of charge at no cost as a public service to help people better understand international issues and how they impact our lives. Today we're taking a look at a very interesting organization, the Jaipur Rugs Foundation, that's working with over 40,000 artisans and entrepreneurs in India to focus on reducing poverty and also to help empower women and to achieve many other goals too. My guest today is an expert on this foundation. My guest today is Yash Ranga, and Yash Ranga is the stakeholder engagement partner at Jaipur Rugs Foundation. Yash, we're talking about this very interesting foundation and what you're doing to try to help folks in India, but there's a ripple effect too. It's not just people in that area. There's economic spin-off in India, but also in other areas where you're operating, as with other businesses too. There are so many components go into this when you have humans, especially 40,000, that are so integral to your success. But a couple of issues that we've heard a lot about, and guests who have been on my show before from the International Labor Organization, others have talked about issues like child labor challenges, human trafficking. I know almost every country in the world has laws condemning all of this, but it does happen in various countries. It happens in the United States, and I'm sure in India and other countries too. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with making sure that you don't have children who are underage or perhaps who should not be laboring or be involved in any type of human trafficking? Of course, if you've had people who've been there for 40 years, they're probably not being human trafficked, I would imagine. I'm just curious, how do you deal with that?
So like in our journey of these 40 years with Jaipur Rugs, we have never experienced this whole scenario of human trafficking. And at time there was a lot of conversation about carpet industry, employing a lot of children, and child labor issues were there. But right from the time when Jaipur Rugs seeds were sown, the founder has a very clear mandate that it is to empower the people and to dignify the people. And we make sure that anyone that get associated with Jaipur Rugs is like has a working age. So we in India we have this working age of 16 to 18 years, and it's all very much followed that no child comes into as a regular work in there and like compromising on their studies. But the case with Jaipur Rugs Foundation, and because of Jaipur Rugs Foundation, is that the children are now going to better schools and they are having better access to education because their mother and their other family partners are able to have such good income in their houses, and that's what have them an empowering effect on their children. And I'll give you one example of a very interesting young woman, a 21-year-old woman, Mosam. She is now completed her graduation, and now she is herself, with her studies, managing a bunch of 25 women. So that's something we see as a growth. And we have never encountered such examples of child labor and human trafficking now.
You're fortunate. That is very good. Excellent. Well, we've been talking about reducing poverty, talking about empowering women, and as I understand it, the majority of the people who are participating in the foundation are females. I flash back to 2015 when the United Nations, the majority, in fact, all the countries, the UN General Assembly, I believe, at the time in September 2015, adopted the Sustainable Development Goals, 17 logical goals to run over the next 15 years, basically the development agenda for 2030. And of course, the first one is to eliminate poverty. The fifth one is to empower women. Are there other goals? These all tie together. They're not isolated. They're not in silos by themselves. But are there other goals that you're focusing on that your company is trying to achieve?
So like through this business model, we try to focus on first, no poverties. Fifth, as you said, like women empowerment, and like the 12th goal of responsible production and consumption. So all the products that are being used as raw material in making of a carpet has been sourced responsibility, and Jaipur Rugs, again being a vertically integrated business model, has capacity, and that's why we make sure that these three sustainable development goals are really made sure that are being touched by activities that we are doing.
That is so important. And there are literally thousands, no, really hundreds of thousands, not thousands, but hundreds of thousands of non-governmental organizations around the world, businesses. A large number of the private sector businesses are getting involved in the Sustainable Development Goals, especially the one to combat climate change and to promote sustainable development, which is so important. It's absolutely vital. You've also been involved, have you not, with some of the United Nations agencies and been involved in some of their activities, or will have future activities? What are a couple of those that you might mention?
So we have made a commitment with first business call to action. So how as businesses we are impacting the sustainable development goals. And then we recently partnered with UN Foundation, and we have made commitments through their campaign called Every Woman, Every Child. So through this campaign, we make sure that women, children, and adolescents gets every opportunity to have a good health, physical and mental, and have opportunities to socio-economic opportunities for them to have a good life. And that's our latest partnership, and we look forward to continue this partnership with UN Foundation and Business Call to Action, and support as much as we can as business in India to achieve these sustainable development goals.
And the UN Foundation, as I recall, was set up by Ted Turner, the founder of cable news network CNN in the United States, with a $3 billion grant. No, it was $1 billion grant. I guess it was at that time back in the late 90s, and that started it rolling. Of course, the UN Foundation is separate from the UN, but they still collaborate and cooperate on various programs. What are some of the UN agencies that you're involved with? One that comes to mind is the Global Compact, which was set up, I believe, in 1999 after the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, if memory serves. And are you involved with the Global Compact, which is an association of businesses, almost 10,000 businesses that participate? Are you involved in that?
So we recently participated in the UN Global Compact, one of its event in India called Making Global Goals Local Business. And we are partnering with the UN Global Compact on action platform for supply chain sustainability. And this year going forward, we have plans to make commitments with the UN Global Compact and get into a formal capacity as a partner with the UN Global Compact. Yeah.
That is we won't go into that today, but the Global Compact is a very interesting UN organization that's brought in businesses from all over the world, and some very large businesses, some small businesses, but they focus on labor rights, they focus on sustainable development, they focus on human rights, eliminating of corruption in businesses and that type of thing, but it's a very fascinating operation. Now, are you involved in future, you've talked about some of your future activities, do you have other future activities that you would like to pursue either with the United Nations or outside of the UN with other private sector groups?
So as a stakeholder engagement partner, to deepen the impact that we are doing through our activities and through our operations, if we get more partners, more opportunities to collaborate with UN and other agencies of UN and other multilateral, bilateral civil societies, then this impact would be fourfold. So that's our future plans, to get associated to the most suitable organization that buys in the philosophy of this whole global development agenda, and how can we contribute in achieving those global development agendas. So we are most open to all the partnerships.
Exactly. And that's where you come in as stakeholder engagement partner. That is so critical. That is something that is, I think, absolutely essential if we're going to be successful in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. But how can we, if you look at, say, the education area, and I know this is not a particular area that you focus on, but still ties into what you're doing, how can we get more people involved, more groups involved, and to have a coordination so that we don't have a duplication of effort, we don't have overlapping responsibilities, we don't have inefficiencies? But how can we do that? Do you have 2 or 3 tips on how to make that happen?
You know, like what I believe is growth is not isolated. If we really want to have a sustained growth, then really there need to be collaborations of expert partners. So everybody has their own set of expertise and expert areas. So these expert areas having their critical role coming together and tying hands, that makes us more critical and more successful for the interventions that are happening as a part of global development. So I would really want to have specific masterpieces come together, join their hands, and then move together in the one direction of development. Yeah.
It's certainly the way to go, and it's the way we need to move to make it successful. Well, before we run out of time, the last minute that we have, I noticed you have this beautiful pin, a lapel pin of a beautiful tiger. What exactly is the purpose of that pin?
So this pin is basically this campaign to conserve tigers. In India, the tigers have been continuously diminishing. So how do we as individuals and for our future generations to not to see them on websites or see them in books, how do we conserve them and protect, no poaching and no things that takes care of, like that affects their lives in their natural habitats. So this whole idea is to promote how we should be responsible towards the wildlife which we are blessed with.
Is the foundation involved in this, or are you personally involved?
That's my personal WWF.
The World Wildlife Fund,
Yes.
I guess is what it is, foundation or fund, I can't remember which, but that it is so important that we do that because the species are disappearing.
Yes.
We're losing them every day, and once they're gone forever in all probability. Well, in our last 30 or 35 seconds, what would be your final message to encourage people to get involved in looking at what you're doing and also the Sustainable Development Goals to help achieve them?
So like what I believe is that what we are doing is the whole model of empowerment, and how we can have more partners and more like-minded people to join us in this moment of empowerment, and then dignify the lives behind the rugs, the carpets, and the artisan communities as whole. And we would be most happy to share our expertise and experience in this space and collaborate and work with them to see this artisan community flourishing and living a dignified life. Yeah.
Well, Yash Ranga, this is a very important project you're talking about, and it's also one that so many of our viewers can identify with and can be involved with. They could either pick go to your website, learn more from you, but they can also be actively involved in their own businesses and do many of the same things because we're all in this together and we have to work together. But I want to thank you so very much for a very interesting and a very informative program.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Bill Miller. Thank you for joining us today on Global Connections Television.